Hello, once again, this is a video response for John TechHead's 100 subscriber competition. Congratulations, John. Hope you get a lot more. And yeah, you had a question basically. So your question was, it's a bit of a long-winded kind of question, which is fine because it has to do with record collecting and how we do things and how do we deal with it basically. So yeah, we buy a lot of records. I do buy a lot of records. Well, there are times, there are periods I buy a lot of stuff. So the question was, how do we sort of deal with it? Do we feel bad about it? Do we listen to old records? Do we listen to new records? How do things happen? Well, in my case, because that's how I can only answer about my case. Obviously, I don't know what other people are doing. I do have a front burner, which you can see here. It's here, so this is and it's over here. These are albums that I've bought recently, and these are the ones that I mainly, well actually, in reality, these are these two new stack. These are new, so these are like a couple of months old maybe. These are older ones. So, so yeah, I've been listening to some, this is Ghost and Skeleton Witch, yay! And then, Arve Hendrickson, Pharaoh Overlord, and Dreamies, Baby, the Bardo Pond, all these kinds of stuff, BJT, yeah, and these are some that I've bought. They're a little bit older, but I've been picking out stuff from the shelves and just revisiting some things. So yeah, I do focus mainly on new things that I buy, because there's the rate that I buy them does not allow me to revisit stuff. But when there's a slow period, I go to the shelves and pick out stuff and try to not try but revisit them and listen to these again. A lot of my listening doesn't always involve vinyl as well, so I do a lot of listening when I'm commuting. I would listen to an album going to work and listen to another album coming from work, and usually these are things that I haven't listened for a while. With regards to albums, yeah, I will listen to I will listen to them. I do get what you were saying, that you like to listen to an album from start to finish, and I'm old school like that, because that's how I learned. That's how I would listen to music. So I buy an album, listen to it start to finish, and the scoring system that I have in my head, this is a good album, is based on the cumulative effect. It's not like I like two songs and it makes a good album. No, I have to like the whole thing. If I like a couple of songs and the rest of it is like meh, then it's not a good album for me. As I said, I buy records, I would listen to them. I listen to them as soon as I get them. The reason why at least I try to listen to them as soon as I get them. The reason is that you might get defects. So you buy a record, and you leave it there for like 2 months, 3 months. You forget where you bought it from. You cannot return it, and it's a problem. So it's better that you actually pop it open and have a play, just to make sure that it plays fine, because otherwise you will have problems getting back and sending it back and changing it for a proper copy, because it does happen. And if you buy a lot of records, then the chances are that you will get defects. So yeah, just get it out of the way really. To actually listen to it, yeah, I try to listen to them as well, as soon as I get them. Then I don't file them, because I don't have any space, so they sort of stick to the front burner kind of thing. I don't mind doing that. I mean, I understand that sometimes you think of, what is this madness that we're doing? Is this something that makes sense? yeah, especially in the digital age where you have like, you know, you have access to a lot of music online and you don't have to own something physically. And to me, having something physically means that I own the music. That's why I buy records. I don't care that much about the sound, although there have been cases that I've noticed that there is a difference in sound, and it does sound much better on vinyl for some reason. And I was, up until like very recently, I was like, you know what, I'm not getting into that debate. The comparison was MP3 to vinyl, and more specifically was for one album, Cosmic Psycho's album, which I've listened to a lot on MP3, and then I put it put on the record again after listening a couple of times on MP3, and there was sort of more music there. It might have been the MP3 rip, I'm not sure, I don't know. I will not go into that debate. And I also noticed that in the Black Sabbath Volume 4 one, which I also had listened quite a few times on MP3, and then I listened to the vinyl and it was sounded a lot more rich. So yeah, that debate does have, you know, some valid points. Obviously, it depends on what kind of hardware you have to actually play the records and, you know, reproduce the music. But in my case, it sort of works. I noticed in at least in 2 records at least. I haven't gone, you know, through everything to, you know, validate it or whatever, because I don't care. What I do care is, you know, having the physical record. I like the physicality of it. I like the fact that, you know, you have to work to listen to music on vinyl. You have to interact with something. You have to interact in a way with you have to interact more with what the artist intended. So you have to interact with the actual physical object. You have to, you know, you have things to interact with. Whereas, you know, if you buy an MP3, it's like, yeah, so what? Yeah, and I buy records. I collect them. I curate them because I've read an article actually about record collecting, and record collecting people that collect records they collect for different reasons. One of the reasons that was quoted was that you have to own beauty to understand it, which is quite beautiful in a way. And the other thing was that they wanted, the people that collected records, that's what the article said, was that they wanted to preserve as well. They wanted to preserve for future generations. That's something that a lot of people are doing. This is what I'm doing actually. This is something that I'm saying, that, you know, I want to own these things. I want to preserve them. I want them to, I believe that these are beautiful objects and they contain beautiful, you know, human outputs that I want to be preserved for future generations, my kids or their kids' kids or whatever, if they can, you know, survive that long. Because, you know, you buy something now, I mean, I have records that are like 40, 50 years old, but, you know, I don't know what will happen in 50 years time or 60 years time. You know, if all this actually has any value to the generations that are going to come, and probably they won't. This is what I have come to realize, that we are at the stage where, you know, there's so much overload that I think that some generations down the line, they will just discard everything and, you know, start fresh. Because I don't know how we will be able to, you know, when I was 14, it was, you know, Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, the Beatles, you know, I don't know, Black Sabbath and the Sex Pistols, and then whatever was happening in the 80s. Now it's all that, and then you could say that, you know what, Frank Sinatra, screw him, I don't care. Elvis, I don't care about that. I'll just focus on what's happening now, and that's what I did when I was 14. I would listen to stuff from the 80s. And as I grew up, then I started discovering things from the 70s and the 60s. And that's how it worked out. But if you're a teenager now, you're 14 now, you have 4 decades of rock and roll music that you have to discover in a way. So how long can we, do that? I don't know. I mean, we're going to be filtering out a lot of stuff, so a lot of stuff is not going to be very relevant. Led Zeppelin might be relevant, the Beatles might be relevant, but I'm not very optimistic about the rest of it. Still, I'm hopeful that all this, my collection, and other people's collection as well. I mean, other people are hoping that, I guess, that will have some value in, the way that it has been curated and the musical content, and that's one other reason that you see collectors wanting to sell off the whole collection. They never sell off parts of it because they think it's one thing, and that's how I feel as well about my collection. I don't want to dissect it and say like, this is £5 or £10 or £20, all this expensive £30. I do that because I need to make some space, but if it came to me selling the whole thing, I'd rather sell it as one thing and just get away, and do away with it rather than, going through the nitty-gritty kind of thing. So I don't know if I answered your question. I don't know if that makes any sense, because I rambled a lot, but yeah, that's it. So don't worry if you haven't listened to an album for a long time. There's loads of new albums that you can take time and and listen to new things, because I have said that in another video of mine, is that we're junkies in a way, so we're looking for the next high, and that's why we're into this, because at some point we did discover one thing that sort of made absolute sense to us, whether when we were teenagers or whenever that was, and that's the kind of high that we're looking for every single time we buy a record. So it's always the new stuff. We need to increase the dosage really, and we'll never go back to that high because we were teenagers, and music has a different influence when you are a teenager, but that's how it is. So yeah, I don't know. That's these are my thoughts on collecting and whatnot. It's been a 13-minute video on answering this question, so I rambled a lot, so apologies for that. Anyhow, congratulations. I hope you get a lot more subscribers, and we'll be seeing you soon.